kind of futuristic aspects are something new for your films. If you've seen Bertrand's other films, they often deal with the past in some ways, so it's not unusual to see like the period setting in this film. But can you talk about wanting to do something futuristic, sci-fi adjacent, and also like, even though it's a futuristic film, it deals with something quite contemporary, which is AI. So I'm just curious if you can speak to
Well, the fact that it became contemporary, I wouldn't think that, you know,
Yeah.
because I started to work on this film like in 2017, and I started another one, but whatever, and I couldn't imagine that when the film was shown for the first time, it was during the fall in Venice Festival, and AI was such a huge subject, you know, not only in cinema movies, in cinema business with the strike and everything, but like a major concern, a major worry worldwide. I thought it would be like in 10 years. But yes, the film became more contemporary than I thought. But when you make, it's the first time I do a science fiction, let's go this way, and I realized that science fiction is creating the world, you know, inventing something, and it allows you to talk about your fear of today. And I think it's the film is full of my fear of today, which it's not only mine. I mean, it's like, I guess I share them with a lot of people.
Can you talk about the three time periods, choosing these eras, and in particular the period setting is interesting just because it's set against the backdrop of the Great Flood. So I'm just curious if you can speak to how you decided to come to these specific eras.
Sure. I wanted one to be close from the Henry James novel, which is not 1910, but like a few years before. And it's something I really like between 1900 and the war. It's a very particular period in which people enter the century full of light, full of hopes, thinking that, you know, the 20th century will be like marvelous, full of progress, no wars, no disease and stuff like that. Well, it was not. No, it was one of the worst with this one. But I like that moment, you know. And in 1910, you have this light, and 4 years after, it's darkness with the First War. And also, I wanted the film to mix each period, like intimate catastrophe and collective catastrophe. And 1910 was the year of the flood of Paris. Then I was trying to find an idea for a more contemporary period in which we could switch the fear of love. In 1910, it's very clear that she is the one she has fear of love, to abandon herself. And I was trying to find an idea more contemporary. And I went to this incel character because even if it's repressed and it cannot say, it's unconscious, what does he say? He says, no one wants me, so I hate you, so I'm going to kill you. But there's maybe something is unconscious, is I am not able to fall in love, to abandon myself. So it was a way to find, to switch the idea, to put it in the male part with a more contemporary period. And talking about incel, I just remembered 10 years ago now, in 2014, the videos of Elliot Roger. That was like a basis for my character. That's why it's set in 2014 in Los Angeles. And 2044, I really wanted like a future that's tomorrow. You know, we all remember 20 years ago, and we know that 20 years is not very long. So there is something more real in that sense, and more concrete. So a future that you can really almost see.
And Elliot Roger, or that character in the film, that his dialogue, a lot of it is also taken directly from what he posted, correct?
Oh yeah, there is only one video that I wrote myself because it had to relate with the script where he says, I am in the front of the house and there is a beautiful girl. Otherwise, all the other one, yeah, I couldn't write this way, you know. It's what really impressed me when I saw the videos 10 years ago. It's the words he uses and the tone of his voice. Something very soft, not crazy. You know, it's not acting like a crazy man. It's not Jack Nicholson in The Shining. You know, and it's even more crazy. It's even more freaky. You know.
Yeah.
So yes, I took every word from him.
Well, one of the interesting things, I think, for this audience, and one of the cool things about the film getting such a nice release, is that this film is partly set in Los Angeles. And I know it may be deceptive, I think you only shot a little bit actually in LA, but maybe you can talk just about the idea of making a film in LA. Your films are very, cinephilic, you have a nice dialogue with cinema history in your films. So I'm just curious, the idea of making a film in LA for you, was that something special?
Well, the idea comes in fact from Edward Roger, because his videos are so LA. The sunset, the houses he films, the beach, and I really wanted to reproduce that. And also, as I had this character of Gabriel in 2014, keeping a house. It couldn't be New York. I don't know. It's in town. The house is not so isolated. So I really like this kind of atmosphere. And of course, shooting in LA for a French guy brings you back so much into cinema quickly as soon as you are working in the street.
Right.
Even though we did not shoot in LA, but only a couple of nights.
Right. Did that influence the decision too to have her be an actress, kind of in this contemporary setting as well? The Lea Seydoux character or actress model.
Yeah, I mean, and I know it sounds a little cliche, but and I like the fact that in 1910, she's a very, very famous and very gifted pianist. And in 2014, well, she's still in art, but she's like a loser actress, And,
Yeah. I mean, the movie seems to have some kind of in conversation with a lot of films about acting. I think the film is partially about, I think you even said it's kind of a portrait of an actress in a way. So I don't know if you can speak to maybe some of the influences or ideas. I know you've mentioned When a Stranger Calls, which is not like a super well-known film, but that was something that influenced you. And there's also obviously strong Lynchian elements in it as well. So I'm just curious if you can talk about how you integrate these influences and ideas.
Yeah, When a Stranger Calls, I don't know if you know this movie, it's in two parts. The first 30 minutes is like a babysitter alone in the house, and there are some kids upstairs, and just the phone rings, and there is a voice saying, "Have you checked the children?" Played by Carol Kane. And then we know after half an hour that the kids are dead. And 7 years later, you spend time with the killer. And Fred Walton does not excuse him, but he helps us. He helps us to understand him. And that's why I wanted to see the film again, because when you start the second part, the LA part, with such strong videos, I didn't want the audience to push George McKay, to hate him, but to still try to understand something, like she does, because what she sees in him is not a psychopath. She sees some lost boy who's just afraid to abandon himself. So that's why I wanted to see this film again. And then the other one I saw before shooting is Martin Scorsese, Age of Innocence, of course, for 1910, because it's so tough to do period film like that could look a little contemporary, And told me I've read a lot about David Lynch. I mean, I think it's just a natural influence, because if I think of him, it's someone that gives you strength in freedom in a way, in trying stuff, in believing in sensation, not only in scripts.
Maybe you can talk about the kind of the future set sequences. Shooting that, and it's simultaneously very sparse. It's not super what you would think of maybe as a futuristic film. It's they just wear a visor and it's very depopulated. So I'm curious where the idea came to have. It's not like an outrageous, over-the-top sci-fi sequences. They're just kind of basic.
But that was, of course, the most challenging, because in producing 1910, it's a lot of work, but you have some images and you know how to do them and stuff like that. The future, you have to invent.
Yeah.
So it was a long way to find some ideas, and I really wanted to avoid the hyper-technologic side of science fiction films, or the post-apocalyptic, which are the two main tracks in a way. And as it's 2044, I mean, it's very tomorrow. So I took Paris just as it is, and I really took away the cars, the sounds. the computers, the internet, the social medias, adverts and stuff like that, to get a very, very empty Paris. And we redid all the sounds, so it's like very fake in a way.
Yeah.
So it's okay. I say there is no more catastrophe, but it's quite freaky at the same time.
Yeah.
This kind of emptiness and minimalist stuff. But for some ideas, for example, it took us a long time to find the machine in which it goes to go back to our past lives. We started to draw like machine stuff, and I don't know, everything seemed but fake to me. Then we had this idea of bath and black liquid, and I don't know, it's why for me it says, okay, that's a good idea. So Back in the Future is quite, you go through many weird ways there.
What I find kind of humorous about it too is like even in the future, people constantly just want to go to a club from like the 70s and 80s still. Like it's like that's another cycle of just like history repeating itself or something.
Yeah, I mean, they were so lonely in the future. Even a friend, she never sees her. It's just a voice coming. I invented this place which I call like a kind of free zone, you know, in which you go, just you can do some stuff, you know. And of course, clubs are amazing for that. And so as the present is so tough, the clubs becoming like a refugee in the past.
Right.
So every time they go, it's a different year, and it's like kind of game.
Yeah. Rewatching the film, one of the things I found interesting was like how long you wait to actually get to the LA section. It's sprinkled, like obviously the first moment in the film turns out to be contemporary, and then there's like a little moment where you kind of flash forward, but by and large it goes, it's like well over an hour in until you get to the long LA sequence, and that mostly goes unbroken for a while. So I'm just curious how you decided to structure it. Because I think the 1910 section actually plays out completely before the LA even starts. So I'm curious how you decided to balance the two.
I mean, the structure is so long to find, and it's writing, it's not editing.
Right.
The film you saw is exactly the film I wrote. It's not, but it was very long because one of the challenges was not to make 3 films but 1 film. You know, so I don't know. I know it's weird. You start with a green screen, then you go in 1910, then 2044, then back to 10. Then you have a clairvoyant that puts you in 2014. But it took me like 30 drafts to find the perfect structure, so the audience is a little lost, but not too much, you know, just lost as the character is lost. When you have to put a sequence that rings the bells with that, and it's just, it's not ideas I have, it's just, this was, for example, it's just amount of work to find the structure, yeah.
Compared to your other films, did you find this one, was it longer to write? What was the process any different? Because people, critics like myself too, fall into this. We talk about your style a lot and your directorial kind of prowess more than maybe the writing itself. So I'm curious, just if it was different than normal.
This was the longest writing I've done. I told you 30 drafts, which is used. Because at one moment there were 3 periods, 1910, 1936, and 2014. And I decided to add the future and to do a mini series, like 4 times an hour. Then it was hard time financing it, so I stopped. I did another film called I'm a Child. Then I reread it and I said, okay, go back to a feature, you know, and try to find the film inside the mini series. So it was a very long way, and at what moment, you know, the film found its form and you say, okay, I have it.
Yeah.
But it was a long writing process. But with this kind of concept, you know, you go back to the past and to your ancient lives. You can write that for 10 years, you know. It's a vertigo.
Right. And since there was kind of a long gestation process, did you find the film changing in any demonstrative way? There was a film, I mean, you mentioned Zombie Child, but you also made another film, which it wasn't as widely seen, called Coma, that I think it actually, at least from my view, maybe played a significant role in maybe how you thought about technology and maybe futuristic ideas. So can you talk about maybe how it changed from maybe 2017 to when you ultimately were filming? If any of those films or ideas took different shape as you
I think the final draft was in 2021, and we were ready to shoot, but we had to postpone the film again because of the schedule of Léa Seydoux. So we postponed the film like from 1 year, so I have a blank year, you know, and my producer said, okay, you make a short movie, you know, waiting. I said, no, I'm going to do a feature with the budget of a short movie. And I did Coma, which, of course, the subject is very different from The Beast, but there are some relationships in the form, in the different, mixing different worlds and different type of images. So I tested some things in Coma that I did on The Beast just after.
Right. Can you talk about the casting and also, you know, the film is dedicated to Gaspard Ulliel, and who passed away, but he was originally, you guys were collaborating for this film, and you worked together on Saint Laurent. Can you talk about the initial idea to work with him, and switching to George McKay at some point, and how that turned out?
I thought of Gaspard and Léa during the writing. For me, it was for them. Then when the writing was finished, they both read the script and said yes, and we started to work a little. And when Gaspard died, we were like a few weeks away from the shoot. So besides the pain, I mean, I had a whole crew and an actress coming to me and said, what do you want to do? We are going to do what you want, but just tell us. So I said, okay, I'm still going to do the film. I'm just going to postpone the film and start to find another actor, but I will not replace Gaspard by a French actor. Because for me, the comparison would be, I didn't want any comparison. It would be impossible for the actor, impossible for me, because you think, oh, it's Gaspard would have done this or that. So we started to do like a classical casting process, meeting American and British actors. And after a few months, I met George in London, and he worked on a few scenes. I went to see him. Of course, I mean, the tests were immediately really good. He's an amazing actor. But besides that, I could see in him an intimate understanding of all the challenges of the film, all the questions of the film, something very deep. So for me, it was obvious that he would be the one, and he made the film possible again. So I brought him back to Paris just to see him and Léa together, to see the couple. But I mean, it worked very well for me, I think.
Right. You know, the film ends with in an untraditional manner with a QR code, which I think maybe one of the ideas is like it kind of ends in a soulless way. It deals with a lot of these ideas, the film. So I'm curious, just the idea to do that, but also just like in a general sense, do you find yourself to be hopeful about the world, the future, and yeah, so two-part question, and also just a heavy.
Okay, let's start with the QR code. No, in fact, I remember, you know the films from the 50s and 60s that end really quickly, just the end, you know, and I like this kind of shock you had, you know, and then it's finished. And I really wanted to find that again, and I think the QR code fits really well with the dehumanization of the film, you know.
Yeah.
And at the end, you have like George, who's like becoming like a robot. You have the QR code, which is not very human, and Léa at the summum of our humanity, and it makes her feel even more alone in a way. Yeah. So that's why I put the QR code, and it's never been done before. But
no, I like it. Yeah. No, and I think I told you this before. Like when I first saw it, I thought it was like a temporary thing, but it's nice to see that that was the idea from the beginning.
Yeah, what's the idea? I mean, I had to struggle with some people because some people disagree, but now it's. But when it was in Venice, everyone said, "But it's just for the festival." I said, "No, it's for the releases." And about my optimism, or my pessimism. It's difficult to be optimistic. You know, when I was a kid, I grew up in the 70s, and I grew up with the idea, because everyone was telling me that, my parents, you know, that tomorrow will be better than yesterday, you know. And I have a kid which is 20, and she grows up with the idea that tomorrow will be worse than yesterday. So, and everything goes in this sense. But if I'm talking about the film, of course, I've worried about many things, from, you know, wars to ecology, but relationship between technology and humanity is something that freaks me out, yes. Because technology is like a tool, and it's fantastic for many things, including AI, like research in medicine, stuff like that. But the tool depends what you do with that, you know. And that's why last year everybody was so scared, because what are we going to do with AI? You know, it has to. It asks questions, in ethical questions, political questions, moral questions, and the three things, you know, are very in danger these days. So yes, not so optimistic about that.
Well, unfortunately, we are out of time, but I hope you guys enjoyed the film, and yeah, please say hi to Bertrand on our way out. And yeah, thank you guys for coming.